I think for me, I want to start automation as early as possible so that we can scale. A lot of times in the startup world, you encounter a problem and you're like, okay, how can I band-aid this right now and then keep going on with my day-to-day tasks? And before you know it, you end up with 100 band-aids all over and you're trying to like fix all of these things at once.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Optimize Show, brought to you by Spendflo. I'm your host for the episode, David Kim, and I'm an account executive here with Spendflo. Spendflo is a unified SaaS buying and management solution that enables high-growth businesses to buy, renew, as well as manage SaaS subscriptions. Today, I'm excited to have Desene Sterling, the controller at Sourcegraph, with us. Sourcegraph is a leading code intelligence platform revolutionizing how developers understand, how they fix, and automate their code. Welcome, Desene. It's a pleasure to host you today.
Thanks. It's so nice to be here.
Well, just seeing, obviously, having a solid grasp of accounting isn't necessarily just about the numbers. It's the key to driving successful financial strategy. So this episode is going to dive into the world of accounting, equipping founders and aspiring finance leaders with the knowledge and the tools that they need to thrive. We'll unpack the complexities of financial planning, revenue recognition, and internal controls specific to the SaaS model. So, Desene, to kick us off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience as a finance professional, the organizations you've worked with, and your journey so far in your career?
Sure. I've been a little bit of everywhere. I've dabbled in SaaS, hardware, various stages of companies from Series A all the way to a public company. So I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on all the intricacies of each different stage.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that is a pretty wide background of where you've been so far. And given that type of background in accounting across diverse industries like hardware, even real estate, and then now being in SaaS, I'd love to understand what a transition to SaaS looked like for you as a controller and a finance leader.
I think each of the different industries has its own challenges. For me personally, RevRec has been the greatest challenge and has the greatest variability. With hardware, like when I was at GoPro, it's pretty straightforward. You recognize revenue when the product is sold. Whereas in SaaS, there's a lot more variability depending on like, is your software cloud? Is it on-prem? Discounting associated with the product. And for me, I've had to really rely on hiring people with the expertise, utilizing outside providers that are gut checking our internal assessments and making sure that we're set up for success.
Even with GoPro, I find that the interesting thing as a customer and user of GoPro in the past, obviously you have the hardware, you have the video cameras that people purchase, but behind the scenes, there's also a GoPro membership, isn't there? So with your controllership at GoPro, was revenue recognition also pertaining to the membership or subscriptions that you were selling for the GoPro software?
Yep, it was. So when I was there, they rolled out the GoPro software,
Mhm.
and it was cloud-based software, so it was a little more straightforward. But yeah, that was definitely my first experience.
Yeah. And I guess the different I guess the part that doesn't make it as complicated is that it's not business to business sales contracts. It's a self-serve plan. There's only three or two different plans that you can, sign up to. So maybe the revenue recognition is still a lot more simplistic when compared to a B2B sales contract that can have so many different things going on.
Correct. B2B definitely has more variability. There's a lot more, I would say like deployment methods, like is it cloud? Is it single tenant cloud, multi-tenant cloud? Is it on-prem?
Mm.
And generally with B2C, you're looking at cloud software.
Yeah, definitely. So here at Sourcegraph, do you currently use a tool for revenue recognition? Do you guys still do it old school and do it manually? What's the situation there?
Yeah, we use Zone for our billing and we are on NetSuite. So in NetSuite, there's a module called ARM. It's Advanced Revenue Management. So we have pretty much automated all of it. There are some touch areas when there are contract changes.
Yeah, before my time at Spendflo, I spent some time with a ChargeBee. So not only did I represent or sell subscription management, but in addition to that, I sold revenue recognition solutions.
Yep.
So I'm pretty familiar with the type of processes that you go through at the end of month and end of quarter. But I bet I don't even scratch the surface in terms of what you really have to get down to doing those things. But the scene, how does procurement differ between these industries and the different companies, particularly focusing on the shift from traditional models like hardware and real estate to now procurement in a subscription-based company and a SaaS company?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is not having to look so much at inventory levels. When you're looking at hardware procurement, like you're constantly wondering like, when is the next purchase I'm going to have to make? It's a lot harder to predict. Whereas like in a SaaS environment, you're generally purchasing software, you don't have the physical goods, maybe you're looking at events. So I hate to say the procurement process is smoother because that's not always the case, but I would say it is easier you have start and end dates, right? So you can see when contracts are coming due, and it's easier to predict when your costs are coming, when you're going to have to pay. It's in my opinion, easy to track.
Definitely. I don't think I touched too much into the world of procurement back then, but before I got into sales, I was actually a purchasing specialist and data analyst for a small RC car manufacturing company. So a lot of the ways that I forecasted and put in orders for the parts that we needed was just through modeling. I was kind of like an Excel wizard, so I would apply these formulas, look at past trends of what went off the shelf and what we need. So it was a really interesting time to get into that type of stuff. And software absolutely is a different way to look at things. One interesting thing is that it seems like, depending on the type of company that you're speaking with, they still like to look at things in terms of the term inventory. Even when we are talking about software procurement, a lot of procurement departments like to look at things in terms of, hey, what's the inventory of licenses that we have, which is a really unique way of looking at things. But from there, I'd be curious, what at Sourcegraph and other companies before too, how do you go about your procurement process? And let's stick to software for this topic.
So I would say the vast majority of startup companies that I've worked at, procurement didn't really exist. I think that like you generally don't have that function at these smaller companies, and it's kind of a free-for-all in terms of business units buying what they need, notifying accounting, hey, we signed this contract. And there's not like a centralized location where we're able to see like, okay, here's all of the contracts we have for all of our vendors. Here's the start date. Here's the end date. Here's the cost. Here's our cost per user. So it's been pretty crucial for me to work towards implementing a procurement solution. We're on Airbase right now, and we use that as it's our guided procurement. So all of our approvals live in there, all of our contracts live in there. It gives us a really nice picture of what's coming. So that helps us on the accounting side for accruals. It helps us on the FP&A side for managing budget. And I think it gives the business a lot more variability or visibility into like what exactly they have in their tech stack that they may not know.
Right. And at what size would you say, even at Sourcegraph, you guys picked up a system like Airbase? Because obviously for a small startup, maybe at the size of 30, 40 employees, they might not even be thinking of a project like that. So when did it click for you guys internally to say, hey, we should get onto a procurement software that'll at least help us manage this from a top-down perspective?
Yeah, I think we probably jumped on it a little bit too late. So when I came in 2021, we had outsourced all of our accounting, and we were using Bill.com. We did not have a procurement software. And it was very much a manual exercise and like pulling together accruals, pulling together contracts, FP&A. Their process was super manual, trying to figure out how to budget. I tend to err on the side of earlier rather than later. And you want a company, like you can go with a company like Airbase, which like it doesn't require a procurement team. The accounting team can manage it. And it's going to work for you at 30 people, and it's also going to work for you at like 500 people. So something that can grow with you.
I like that point of view. It's, hey, if you can apply this type of thinking in this process at 30, it should work for you when you're at 300. And hopefully that company is able to scale with you and grow with you and to support the different use cases that might be coming up. If you had to pick, two common mistakes that finance leaders might be making when it comes to SaaS procurement, do you think there are any common mistakes that you've seen in the past with finance leaders as it relates to procurement?
Yeah, I think to my point on the last question, not pulling them in soon enough, not setting up a procurement function, and that doesn't have to be a team. It could be a software that's managed by your accounting team. I just think that if you can set your finance team up to support the business, the business can grow, and you're not going to have to worry about how do I staff my team to support this? How am I also going to implement this project while trying to keep up with the day-to-day? So maybe slightly earlier, I think is better. Right. And second, I think that this is two parts, making the process you implement too confusing for the end user and maybe not getting their buy-in or their opinion. I think that as accountants, we think very like logically, and like we use a lot of terms and definitions that may not be clear to the business. So if you have someone come in and see all this stuff, they're instantly going to be like, I don't want to do this. I don't know how to do this. So making sure that they're educated is pretty key.
Right, definitely. And yeah, your school of thought is that, hey, at the root or at the core of this issue is that sometimes companies start this whole procurement thinking a little bit too late in their journey. If they were to do it earlier and develop those habits while growing, that you could have a bit more of a responsible way of growing in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, gotcha. And I would be curious to understand from your perspective, how do you see automation impacting the role of accounting teams? And one thing that I would say is, I have had the opportunity to go and speak with CPA firms, go to their events before, and it seems like there's always a shortage of new accountants to come in, and that AI seems to be kind of this thing that would help fill the gap of the shortage of talent coming into the accounting profession. So I'd be curious, how does automation play into your profession and your world of how you think the future is going to be?
For sure. I think that it lets us run a super lean team. We're not having to increase headcount proportional to the headcount increases in the business, which is really nice because G&A is not a revenue driver. So like it's hard, we have to fight much harder to get headcount. I think that when we rely on automation and anything that we can automate, one, it lets like the team focus on more high value stuff, helps us grow our careers, helps us like think and not just work on like spreadsheets. But at the same time, it's good for the business. We're not spending costs on people.
And have you been at a company where it wasn't necessarily like that, where it wasn't all that modern? And what was that
Oh my
experience
gosh, yes.
like?
Of course. Of course. I think it's challenging. I don't like manual work for a lot of reasons. One, because I really don't enjoy throwing people at a problem. I'd much rather like
Hmm.
solve the problem with software so that it can scale with the business, instead of just adding more people. And also I want to remove the opportunity for manual errors. So generally, if you set up a good automated process, like you're improving the accuracy of your end product quite a bit.
Apart from billing, ERP general ledgers, as well as you using a revenue recognition solution today, what are some other tools that maybe people aren't familiar with that you would say, hey, I wouldn't live without this tool, today, now that I know it exists? Is there anything like that in the stack that you use as an accountant or in controller?
Close management software, I think is
Mm,
I don't know. I think once you get to like the accounting manager level and you are looking at the whole close and like how many moving parts there are and dependencies, I don't think you truly see the value of close management software. And that's for like reconciliations, close checklists, and all of that. And uh, my brain very much functions in that sort of way. So like that for me is pretty invaluable. That's how I keep tabs on how everything is going. And if something's held up, like I know maybe 3 or 4 steps ahead, all of these other items that are going to get held up.
yeah, most definitely. And what about a wish list? Are there areas that you see maybe even in your current role where, hey, if I had a wish list, this would go on there where it would help fill a gap of what I don't have, and it would really help simplify my performance, my responsibilities, all of that.
When I think about the most manual function in my accounting world right now, it's accruals. I think that that's so hard to automate because there is so much
Mm.
subjectivity and we're constantly having to check in with our business units. Like, have you received this? Has this project started? So if I could have my wish list of like, what is the greatest thing to automate, it would be the accruals process.
Interesting. And yeah, from your experience, I'd be curious to understand. So, going from a very basic accounting software to something more robust, and like NetSuite is obviously that one where it seems like 80% of companies are going to be using it. So, when would be a right time for a startup to upgrade or up level themselves from a basic accounting software moving into a robust accounting system?
I think this question is so incredibly hard to answer because there are so many paths you could go down.
Yeah.
I think the real thing is like you have to be looking a couple years in advance. Like, are you planning to go international? Are you planning to introduce foreign currency? Are you planning to IPO? Those are the sort of things that if you are going down that path in the next maybe like year or two, you need to jump on a more complex accounting system than a QuickBooks or a Xero like right now, because it takes time to implement. You're going to be wanting to run full financials for like the past couple of years, and it's going to be really hard to piecemeal them together from two systems. I also think that there is a lot of like I would call them like middle of the road players coming in now, where it's like not quite a NetSuite, but it's definitely more robust than a Xero or a QuickBooks. Like Rillet is a really good example, that I think fits into that kind of company where or kind of software that can grow with your company. Like it's going to work for you at 30 people and it's going to work for you at 200 plus people. So I think that
Yeah.
that option didn't exist as much maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow. Really? So what would you say was the roadmap back then when that middle player didn't exist? Is it you go from QuickBooks up to NetSuite? Those are kind of the two options, or what did that look like for you personally?
Yeah, so pretty much every time I have switched from QuickBooks or Xero onto what you would consider like your more traditional ERP, we've done an eval of NetSuite, Oracle, and like Sage Intacct. Like
Mm-hmm.
those were the ones you looked at.
Yeah. So there's really about four names in the hat that you can choose from. If
Yeah,
you're a startup, you got two. And then when you
yeah,
graduate, you got two. And that was really slim pickings. And now you're
pretty
seeing more
much.
options come out into the market.
Definitely.
Wow. Very cool. And how do you adapt your accounting processes, your controls, to maintain accuracy, be more efficient when it comes to scaling a business? I believe you've been helping with that at Sourcegraph. So I'd be curious to get your experience about how you've been adapting your processes there.
I think for me, I want to start automation as early as possible so that we can scale. A lot of times in the startup world, you encounter a problem and you're like, okay, how can I band-aid this right now and then keep going on with my day-to-day tasks? And before you know it, you end up with 100 band-aids all over and you're trying to like fix all of these things at once. All right, if I solve this now, how is this going to work if the business size doubles, if revenue doubles, if our AP volume doubles? And you want to make a decision that is not just going to fix your immediate, it's going to fix when those like exponential growths start happening.
Wow. Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good perspective to keep in mind because, hey, what if you come down 5, 6 years down the road and you realize that you've just patched everything up with band-aids
Yeah,
every single turn of the corner? That doesn't necessarily help you in the end goal of, hey, let's scale efficiently.
yeah.
Well, now you have 40, 60 different things that don't really work with the different dependencies that you have as an organization. So that's really interesting. So, Desene, how can the accounting team be working more collaboratively with the other departments, ensuring strong financial management practices are embedded throughout the organization?
I encourage my team quite a bit to get involved with the different business units and understand what they are doing so that when we are implementing a process, it actually fits their day to day. We have blind spots. We don't know what they're doing day to day. We know what we want our end result to look like. And we do this by using test groups before we roll out a process. So we will have our, if it's an AP process, like the biggest buyers in our company, go through this process with us, give us feedback, like how does this work for you? Are there things we're missing? Is this too complicated? What do you not understand? And I think it gives them a sense of ownership in the process so that when we ultimately roll it out, like they're very much on board. They have a shared sort of like ownership and hey, we helped build this and they want to then pass that through their teams.
Yeah, I like that. And it seems like as a company, what Sourcegraph does, you guys have a pretty tight process and due diligence process of how you are going to implement change. I think, coders, engineers, they're probably the ones that are, most high attentive about change management and how they're going to do things. So it seems like that permeates throughout the organization of how you do changes as a company.
I think working at a company that makes an engineering tool that is so engineering heavy, we are very lucky in that people are thinking like very
Exactly.
logically, like it's almost like accounting the way we think, So I think that that's helpful for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Desene. It's been a pleasure to host you and listen to your insights on accounting in software as a service. What an amazing episode. I'm sure our listeners will have learned a lot from Desene's experiences, leadership, and so much more. You can connect with Desene on LinkedIn to continue the conversation and check out the episode description for her LinkedIn and any additional resources mentioned. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep thriving in your financial journey. Thank you for tuning in.